Hi there, Chris Fox here. I'm gonna take you to school today a little bit. We're gonna look at wheels. So these are a couple of spare wheels that I have, and they're actually in good shape. So I wanted to show you the difference. You have curve plate wheel, which in here has a curve on it, on the plate, and you have straight plate wheel, which is just straight. Let's see if you can see it better on this side. Probably not because of the shadows, but hopefully you can see it a bit better. In Canada here, curve plate wheels are interchangeable. So these can be done on all cars nowadays have curve plate wheels. Locomotives and cars actually. Straight plate wheels they can't be interchanged. They're prohibited from interchange, but if you have a straight plate wheel in captive service, it can be run until there's a defect on the wheel, and then that wheel has to be changed out. So you got curve plate and a straight plate. So now we're going to go and we're going to measure them, and I'll show you how to measure the wheels. Alright, so here we have some wheel gauges. We have a whole bunch of different gauges here. Two of them are the same, and so I have 3 different gauges here. So what you have right here is you have a direct read gauge. You directly read off the gauge, and that tells you how thick and thin and how much the measurement of the wheel is. This is a direct read gauge. This is an AAR Standard gauge. It's a wheel gauge, AAR wheel gauge. So what it does is it's not a direct read. And you can see numbers here on the side which correspond to a chart, and you would write the numbers down, and then you would look on the chart at that number, and then that would tell you the size of the wheel. It's the same thing with the movable flange. You measure it up for your flange thickness. You can line this up here, and then you go to the chart. And same with high flange. What you have here is what you're looking at is a narrow flange side of the gauge. There's a narrow flange and a wide flange. So this is a narrow flange gauge on this side, turned over, and you have a WF over here, which is a wide flange, and you measure it against right here. That's your 0 for your numbers. So this is the AAR style. You can only scrap wheels using an AAR style if you're going to record them. Theoretically you can't scrap them with this, but this will tell you when they're condemned. Other gauges that we have here, the same gauge here, it's just it's an older one, and it's the same gauge as this one here. And then you have a Carman's gauge. I call it a Carman's gauge. It's a wheel gauge. And you can tell with this one, you can tell flange, you can tell rim thickness, and you can tell flange thickness, and you have defects. You have defect gauges, so that if you have, say, a slid flat that's bigger than this 2-inch diameter wheel, then you're done. This other gauge that I have here is an out-around gauge, direct read out-around gauge. These are used for making sure your wheel isn't egg-shaped. So let's go take it out to the wheels and I'll show you how it's done. Alright, when you're measuring wheels, there's 3 things that these gauges do. You can have a thin flange, high flange, and thin tread or thin rim. So there's also a mark on some wheels right here. This mark here, that's called a witness mark. It's not a scrapping mark. It's a matching mark. When you measure from the top of the rim down to the witness mark, and you take the measurement at the top line of the witness mark there, and then you go down the line and you find another set of wheels that would have the same measurement to the witness mark, and that tells you the rim diameter so that you match the wheels. That's it's for matching. So to measure these, you don't measure them from the front, you measure them from the back. You take the gauge and you put it over the wheel like this, making sure that this is in the center of the tread, and then you would read what it says here, and that is how you measure your thin rim. Measure to the back of the wheel in here. So realistically, it's from here to here is your measurement, not here. It's not the same thing. If you wanted to measure your flange thickness, which is here, that's when you would put the gauge on, squeeze the finger, and you would catch it right at the fillet. See how it's at the fillet? It doesn't have to be buried on the tread on that one side. It doesn't have to be bottomed out on the tread. It just needs to be right at the fillet. And then you would read it. You'd read it right here. And that tells you how thick the flange is. And then the other way is flange height. And you flip the needle over and you put it down on top. And then you'd read it where my thumb is. It tells you if you have high flange. Those are the three major ones that you have. Hollow tread is also a major one, and you measure hollow tread by using the same gauge. And you run it across like that. And you can see there is a bit of hollow tread in this one. It's not condemnable by any stretch of the imagination, but you would measure from the center of the gauge to the center of the tread. So here's the gauges. This particular gauge is a Carman's gauge, or what I call a Carman's gauge. I particularly like this gauge. It's a very fast, real easy way of measuring, and all kinds of measurements on this one. So you can tell right at a glance very quickly if it's condemned or if it's not, if there's a problem with it, if it's approaching condemning, and you also have you can measure defects with it. So to do that with this, you take the gauge and you just slap it on the wheel like that, finger pointed down on the tread, and then you read right along the bottom there. It tells you what it is. If it's close to an inch, if it's close to 2 inches, if it's close to 7/8, if it's close to 3/4, which is scrap. So this one here is, for example, it's above, it's well above an inch. So we're good. And the other side is these two keyholes. They're for measuring flange. So if it's slipped in, that means that's a 7/8 flange. This one's 15/16. So I know that these flanges are good, because if these can slide down, this one's getting there. You can see the difference there. You can see how it's got probably needs a reprofile at some point. But this one's okay on that one. It's slipping on this one, but it hasn't bottomed out, so it's still okay. The other neat thing on these gauges is that 1/8 mark there, any wheel that has a chip, a shell, that has a 1/8 inch deep, if you can put this down like this on it and it goes flat to the wheel, then that's condemned. Same thing with a 2-inch wheel, that 2-inch hole there. If you're going around looking for a slid flat and you can hear it, and then you put this over it and the slid flat's bigger than that wheel needs to be turned. It's condemned. Yeah, that just gives you an idea. You can also check for hollow tread, as per like that one's okay. You would measure with a steel ruler, like I said before, from the center of the wheel up. Anyway, Carmen's gauge, combined gauge. It's a very, very handy gauge. So you take the outer round gauge, bring it over and set it on the wheel, right? And then first off, you'd run it up so that there's a gap underneath, and then you'd run it down so it just touches the wheel, and then you direct read it right here. Okay, that gives you the profile of the wheel on that side, and then on the other side it tells you the diameter of the wheel. So that one's between a 32 and 33 wheel. It's halfway between the two, so 32 and a half. But you would check it there, and then you would check it here, quarterly all the way around the wheel. And you have to move the car to do the bottom. And then that tells you if the wheel is out around or not. And if it's out around, you're going to have to turn it. So that's a quick rundown on how to measure wheels and the type of wheels. Thanks for watching.